Hey there, nice to see you again. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz, Bronx Nets program, where we talk to reporters, writers, editors, journalists, all different people who are putting stuff out. And in our second segment this evening, we're going to talk to somebody in the Bronx who's literally working to change the world. But we'll get to that in a moment. Right now, let's bring on Bronx Times staff writer, our friend Aliya Schneider. Always good to see you, Aliya. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Aliya, I'm just going to say it, and I said it to you privately. I'm not shy. You are just doing an amazing job, and the Bronx Times has transformed into really one of the most important publications in the Bronx, and we appreciate your excellence. So there you go.
Thank you.
I hope it didn't make you feel uncomfortable about saying that. Let's just get right to it. I had worked near Fordham Road for a number of years, and when I would take my car on the days I didn't ride my bike, and then try to drive down from Fordham Road down, I was in Fordham and Jerome, and then would drive down Fordham Road maybe to get to Southern Boulevard or the Bronx River Parkway. It would take forever. The buses now are there's a whole question of different types of road configurations. What can you tell us about what is going on there? And some people like it and some people don't, it seems.
Yeah, so DOT had made three proposals in
Mhm.
terms of ways to try to help the congestion, particularly for the BX12 on Fordham Road. And one of the options was to create offset lanes, because right now the bus lanes are right along the curb. And so creating offset bus lanes would remove one of the driving lanes and create space between the bus lane and the curb for parking and loading. And the
So
hope with that,
let me
yeah,
just ask you, offset would mean that there would be that bus lane, but then there would be a tiny little lane. They would use some space to give more space for that bus lane. Is that what offset means?
yeah, so there would be a lane in between the bus lane and the curb that people could use for loading and for parking. So
Oh.
DOT said that they would make designated parking zones and loading zones, because a big problem with the bus lanes right now is people are trying to use the curb for loading and double parking, and they're blocking the bus lane. So the hope with that would be those cars would be out of the way of the bus lane because there would be space along the curb.
Let's talk about it from the bus perspective to start. This is, as I understood from your article, the busiest bus route in the Bronx, and if the buses are not moving, people are not taking the buses. If they have a choice, they may take the car, or they may sit on the bus for an extra little bit till somebody who's double parked or unloading, can't they can't pass. So from that perspective, this could work, right?
Yeah, so that would be the hope, is that it would speed the buses up. And then another option that DOT proposed would be creating a busway, which is going further to prioritize bus service on the road. And that would be restricting access to the road, pretty much reserving it for buses and trucks. And other cars could access the road for local access, like if they needed to get somewhere that was along that corridor. But in terms of through traffic, so if you're just driving to get somewhere else, cars would not be allowed to take
Would
that
not be
route.
allowed at all on Fordham Road. Is that what
Not
you're?
for through traffic.
Not for
So
through traffic.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
wow.
And
And
so
then yeah, go ahead.
DOT had, so there were three proposals. One was the offset bus lanes. One would be to do a busway in both directions, and the
Right.
other one was just one direction. And transit advocates, they much prefer the busway. But what they're
Really?
saying now, because basically DOT said that they're going to go forward with the offset lanes, but that they need to study them further. And transit advocates, they want those offset bus lanes now. They want to happen as soon as possible. They don't want any more studies. And then they want DOT to continue studying a busway and still consider doing that.
So that okay. So now I'm thinking for a driver and somebody who, and I do operate a vehicle sometimes on Fordham Road, sometimes in other places in the Bronx. if you remove the cars or make it more difficult, in other words, you talk about making, instead of the 2 lanes, 1 lane, there's no way it's going to be quicker to go, traverse Fordham Road going downhill, going east. Um, that would mean that, although Kingsbridge Road doesn't go all the way down to Webster, that would mean that places like Bedford Park or maybe 183rd Street further down are going to get very crowded, right? I mean, all the people who, let's say, work, on Fordham Road and west of Jerome Avenue, those people who all drive, that I don't know. I don't know how to how to think about it. Any thoughts on it, or we're just going to wait and see? What's your point of view?
Well, I think this is probably something that DOT is studying, but I think part of the idea is that right now there's a lot of congestion, there's double parking, people are having trouble accessing the curb. So the idea is if people who need to access the curb can just directly access it, then maybe there'll be less
All right,
congestion for the rest of
got it.
traffic. But yeah, the travel lanes for cars will be condensed into one. Um, I'm not sure exactly what the effects of that would be, but I'm sure that's
Well,
something that
they'll
DOT is
they'll study.
studying.
All right, let's move on before we run out of time. You wrote about the first cannabis dispensary that opened in the Bronx in Crotona on East Tremont Avenue, but you added a little caveat that questions arise over long-term plans. Why can't we or they say this is where it's going to be?
That's a great question. Yeah, so the cannabis dispensary is called Status, and they advertised this dispensary location as a temporary spot on East Tremont Avenue. And when I spoke to one of the owners, she said that they will probably be here for about 4 months tops, and then they're going to be moving to their permanent location on Jerome Avenue, and that the Jerome Avenue location is under construction and they just wanted to start selling as soon as possible and not wait for the other place to be ready.
Yeah.
But the local Community Board 6, has gotten a different message from Status. And in the same day that I was told that from the owner, the district manager was told that there's no definitive plan to move and they
Oh.
want to stay at the East Tremont location, and they may open a second location on Jerome Avenue.
And
So,
Jerome and where?
oh, I forget at the top of my head, but
Okay.
it's in the Mount Eden
In the
area.
mountains,
Yeah,
similar, just a little further west from
but
that.
it is another community board's jurisdiction. It's
Yeah.
CB4's,
Uh,
and so it's really mixed messages, and those mixed messages, last I checked, have kind of continued. So I guess we'll have to see
We'll
what
have
ends
to
up
wait and
happening.
see. But, I think that this would be only what Gary thinks, knowing the pressures to open a place in the Bronx. I think that they said, look, if you can do it now, do it here. And then if something has to develop later, we'll figure it out. I think there was a lot of pressure. Whether it be from all different forces, the borough president's office, the Bronx Community Foundation, a lot of people who are advocating this said, get this done because otherwise, you're not solving this issue in the Bronx. Last thing I want to talk about is the very contentious primary for the 13th council district. There was, for the first time, I moderated a Republican debate in the Bronx. It's the bluest county in the nation, and so we never had more than one GOP candidate. And so it turned out that Christy Mamorato won the Republican nomination, and Marjorie Velasquez once again won the Democratic nomination. Where do you want to go? What do you want to talk about first?
I don't know. It's up to you,
All
Gary.
right, there we go. Let's talk about the Republicans because Samantha Zerka criticized very publicly and openly the Bronx GOP for kind of using familial relationships to select the candidate, and said that they weren't true red. And so let's start there. Will Ms. Mamorato be able to get the support of all the Bronx GOP that will be needed to defeat Democrat in the fall who has 61% of the votership, in our favor?
I will add that George Havernack also was criticizing Christie and the Bronx GOP for her relationships with
Mm.
the establishment. I'm not sure if you just said this or not, but Christie's brother
Oh, I
is
did
the
not say it.
head.
Yes.
Okay, so her brother is the head of the Bronx GOP. Her husband is a commissioner for the Board of Elections. So her opponents are really going after her, saying, "You got this position," because to back up, the Bronx GOP endorsed her. So she had the support of the establishment, and her other opponents really went saying that this is because of your relationships. You haven't been as involved with the community as we have. And of course, she said that undermines her own accomplishments. So that was a really big point of contention in the Republican primary.
Hmm.
And Samantha Zerka said during the Schneps debate that she would not support Christie in the general if she did not win.
Yeah,
And
that I want to just move it along because we will run out of time. I want to move it
okay,
along, and so that would suggest a compromise for her ability to, amass enough votership to defeat the Democrat. On the other side, Bernadette Ferrara made it very clear that she became a Democrat because a new kind of Democrat because she wanted to defeat. Um, Marjorie Velasquez. It didn't work out in the primary. Are there any lasting effects of that particular attempt on Bernadette's part?
well, I think the big question is whether the Democratic primary voters who did not vote for Marjorie Velasquez, whether they will vote Republican in the
Oh,
general. Because if you look at all the votes that went to the other Democratic candidates and that went to the Republican candidates in the primaries, all of those votes together outnumber the number of voters that Marjorie Velasquez brought to the polls in the primary. So the question
oh,
really is, can Christy Marmorato drum up support among the more conservative Democrats and people who just don't want to vote for Marjorie Velasquez again? There's people who are pretty upset with her for switching her position on the
right.
Bruckner rezoning. Um, and as you brought up, can the other Republicans come together to support Christie? So I think that's really the big question
Big
going
question.
forward.
Listen, Aliya Schneider, we need a lot more time to go through all the great stuff you write for the Bronx Times. We thank you for joining us this evening on the Bronx Buzz, and we encourage you to keep writing because we need you bad. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Aliya Schneider from the Bronx Times. We're going to take a short break, folks. And then when we come right back, you'll have a lot of fun with us and talking about literally trying to save the world with the Green Bronx machine. Don't go away.